This was described as the worst and most violent crime scene the responding officers had ever encountered. 9 people were killed, 177 were arrested, and not a single conviction followed. On May 17, 2015, a Texas restaurant parking lot turned into a battlefield. The Twin Peaks shootout became the deadliest biker confrontation in American history. What no one expected was that the legal battle would outlast the gunfight by years. A decade later, lawsuits are still active. Motorcycle clubs continue to operate, and the tension between biker organizations and law enforcement has evolved into something far more complex. What happened that Sunday afternoon in Waco changed how the United States confronts outlaw motorcycle groups. The aftermath revealed a failure of justice, lives upended by mass arrests, and a conflict that still quietly influences law enforcement nationwide, the parking lot battleground. The confrontation erupted at 12:24 p.m. on a sunny Sunday. More than 200 bikers had arrived at Twin Peaks in Waco for a scheduled meeting of the Texas Confederation of Clubs and Independents, a coalition that discusses motorcycle rights and legislation. But long-running hostility between 2 major clubs, the Bandidos and the Cossacks, had been escalating for years. The dispute centered on the Texas bottom rocker, a patch on the back of a biker vest that declares territorial dominance. The Bandidos, founded in 1966 and the dominant club in Texas, claimed exclusive rights to that patch. When the Cossacks began wearing it in 2013 without permission, a violent rivalry began. On the day of the shootout, 18 Waco police officers and 4 Texas Highway Patrol troopers were already positioned around the restaurant. They had received intelligence that violence was likely. A law enforcement bulletin issued on May 1, 2015, stated that tensions between the 2 clubs had recently increased with no signs of slowing. The fight reportedly began over a parking space where someone's foot was run over. Words were exchanged, punches followed, and then gunfire erupted. Witnesses, including 3 military veterans, said the shootout began with a few pistol shots before being overtaken by rapid semi-automatic rifle fire. Security footage showed a man shooting from the patio as others tried to take cover inside the restaurant. Police officers returned fire. When the shooting ended, 9 bikers were dead and 18 more were injured. More than 100 weapons were recovered, including 30 firearms. 7 of the dead were Cossacks, 1 was a Bandito, and 1 was not affiliated with either group. Ballistics later showed that at least 4 of the deceased had been struck by police rifle shots. Determining who fired the fatal rounds became one of the most contested and complicated aspects of the investigation, the mass arrest catastrophe. The decisions made after the gunfire stopped became nearly as controversial as the incident itself. McLennan County District Attorney Abel Reyna ordered that every person on the scene be arrested. Within hours, 177 bikers were taken into custody. All were charged with the same offense, engaging in organized criminal activity resulting in murder and aggravated assault. Every one of them was given a $1 million bond, an amount that ensured most would stay jailed. The arrests were indiscriminate. Many detainees had no violent history. Some were military veterans, some were business owners, and some were not members of either involved club. One of those arrested was Matthew Clendenin, a Baylor University graduate with no criminal record. Another was a retired police officer with more than 30 years of service. Many spent weeks in jail, unable to pay their bonds. Families were separated, jobs disappeared, mortgages collapsed, and children were placed in foster care. The warrants used for the arrests were nearly identical, fill-in-the-blank documents with little individualized probable cause. Being on site wearing biker colors was treated as evidence of participation in organized crime. Attorneys across Texas criticized the handling of the case. Houston attorney Paul Looney called it unacceptable that a shootout resulting in 9 deaths produced not even a single misdemeanor conviction. Dallas attorney Clint Broden called the prosecution a rush to judgment and a series of avoidable mistakes. The prosecutorial collapse. The criminal cases began to unravel almost immediately. A grand jury indicted 155 of the arrested individuals, but prosecutors could not clearly establish who had committed which acts during the chaos. Only one case ever went to trial. In November 2017, Bandito Dallas chapter president Jacob Carrizal stood before a jury. He admitted firing his weapon but insisted it was in self-defense, saying Cossacks had ambushed his group. The jury deadlocked, leading to a mistrial. It was a major blow to the prosecution. In 2019, newly elected District Attorney Barry Johnson reviewed the cases. Despite nearly 2 terabytes of digital evidence, much of it video, Johnson concluded there was not enough proof to convict anyone of murder. On April 2, 2019, 4 years after the shootout, he dismissed all remaining charges against every defendant. Out of 177 arrests, there were 0 convictions. He believed that some aggravated assault charges might have been provable, but the statute of limitations had expired before he took office. The civil rights battle. Once the criminal charges were dismissed, civil litigation surged. More than 130 bikers filed federal civil rights lawsuits against the city of Waco, McLennan County, former DA Abel Reyna, former police chief Brent Stroman, and the officers involved. The lawsuits argued that the mass arrests violated the Fourth Amendment by detaining people without individualized probable cause. Plaintiffs also claimed they were denied due process and given excessively high bonds designed to keep them jailed. Morgan English and her husband were among those who filed suits. They spent 2 weeks in jail after being swept up in the mass arrest. She said the experience left them in constant fear. They lost their jobs, had to move, and still deal with psychological trauma. English told reporters there were people who had children taken away, homes taken away, jobs lost. I don't think Waco understands how many lives were destroyed that day. In December 2024, U.S. District Judge Alan Albright dismissed 13 of the lawsuits, covering 45 plaintiffs, ruling that the officials involved were protected by qualified immunity. A legal doctrine protects government officials from civil liability, except in cases involving clearly established constitutional violations. Attorney Don Tittle, who represents most of the arrested bikers, immediately filed an appeal. As of 2025, several cases remain stalled, awaiting appellate decisions. The legal battle continues with no resolution in sight. The Banditos' federal takedown. While prosecutors in Waco failed to secure convictions, federal authorities successfully targeted the Banditos' top leadership through a separate investigation. In May 2018, following a nearly 3-month trial in San Antonio, a federal jury convicted National President Jeffrey Pike and National Vice President John Portillo on racketeering charges. Prosecutors demonstrated that Pike and Portillo ordered the 2006 murder of Anthony Benesh, who had attempted to establish a Hells Angels chapter in Austin court. Testimony revealed that Portillo, with Pike's approval, had declared the Banditos to be at war with the Cossacks starting in 2013. Federal investigators documented numerous violent incidents across Texas during this period. In March 2015, around 20 Banditos confronted a Cossack member at a gas station near Gordon. When he refused to surrender his vest with the Texas patch, they beat him and struck him in the head with a claw hammer. In September 2018, Pike and Portillo were each sentenced to life in federal prison. In February 2025, federal authorities indicted 14 Banditos members on RICO charges connected to a violent turf war with a rival group known as B in the Houston area. The indictment alleged that the banditos issued a smash on-site order directing members to assault and, if necessary, murder rival gang members on ongoing confrontations across America. The Waco shootout did not end conflicts between motorcycle clubs and police. Instead, it highlighted a national and ongoing issue. Violent incidents involving motorcycle clubs continue to occur across the United States. During Daytona Bike Week in March 2025, a shootout erupted between the Warlocks and the Mongols at a gas station in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Clinton Walker, 41, allegedly opened fire into a crowd of rival bikers before fleeing. In July 2025, the FBI arrested 28 Mongols members in Operation Mongolian Beef, following aggravated rioting charges and the execution of 14 search warrants across multiple states. In May 2025, New York State Police arrested Aaron Morgan, a Twister MC member, on the Southern State Parkway. Officers found him wearing a 1% patch with nunchucks attached to his vest and metal knuckles in his pocket. In April 2023, a shootout between Bandidos and Homietos members at the Whiskey Barrel Saloon in Oklahoma City left 3 people dead. Police arrested 13 suspects with bonds ranging from $1 million to $7 million. In June 2025, 6 alleged Outlaws MC members were arrested in Indiana after a brutal beating at Pike's Pub that was recorded on video and went viral. The FBI became involved due to the severity of the attack and potential hate crime elements. In September 2024, Palm Springs police arrested 23 individuals during a Mongols national run that brought more than 1,000 members to the city. Blurred lines between police and biker culture. The relationship between law enforcement and biker culture remains complicated. Many police officers ride motorcycles and belong to clubs such as the Blue Knights, a law enforcement motorcycle organization with nearly 20,000 members in 640 chapters across 26 countries. Retired ATF Special Agent Charlie Fuller has expressed concern about officers socializing with outlaw motorcycle gang members. They're supposed to be putting them in jail, not socializing with them. That's a no-brainer to me. It creates a major security risk for the entire department. Steve Cook, head of the Midwest Outlaw Motorcycle Gang Investigators Association, argues that officers must choose a side. You're either a cop or a biker. These tensions were vividly exposed during the 2015 Waco shootout. One of the men arrested at Twin Peaks was a retired San Antonio police officer. Photographs showing bikers sitting calmly on curbs while police appeared relaxed fueled accusations that officers treated them too leniently. The legacy of Twin Peaks. 10 years after the shootout, the Twin Peaks restaurant remains closed. Several businesses attempted to reopen in the building, but none succeeded. The property stands as a permanent reminder of that violent afternoon. District Attorney Barry Johnson reflected on the event. We had an open shootout in broad daylight at a public restaurant with 9 dead and more than 20 wounded, and nobody was even convicted of a misdemeanor. That is an unacceptable result in our justice system. The lack of convictions continues to frustrate law enforcement officials. Civil rights advocates, however, argue that the mass arrests themselves represented a more serious injustice, punishing people who may have been innocent by holding them for prolonged periods without proper individualized investigation. Motorcycle clubs continue to operate across the country. The Bandidos remain active despite the imprisonment of their leaders. The Cossacks have not disbanded. Other major clubs, the Mongols, Outlaws, Pagans, and Hell's Angels, maintain strong presences and continue to clash with each other in law enforcement. Conclusion: the Twin Peaks shootout exposed deep fault lines within American society, the conflict between individual liberty and public safety, between the right to freely associate and the government's authority to investigate organized crime. What began as a confrontation in a parking lot evolved into a decade-long legal saga that destroyed careers, bankrupted families, and raised fundamental questions about justice. Criminal prosecutions collapsed. Civil litigation drags on with no clear end. The lessons of Twin Peaks remain unlearned. Mass arrests without individual probable cause can destroy lives as effectively as bullets. Excessive prosecution can be as damaging as the absence of prosecution. 9 people died on May 17, 2015. But the consequences spread far beyond that parking lot. Careers were lost, families were broken, children grew up without parents, communities fractured, and public trust eroded. Conflicts between motorcycle clubs and police continue nationwide. New cases emerge regularly. Federal prosecutors still pursue major clubs. Civil lawsuits remain unresolved. And somewhere in America, another group of bikers is gathering while law enforcement watches, wondering whether history will repeat itself. The aftermath of Twin Peaks proves that sometimes the battles fought in courtrooms and city halls cause more lasting damage than the gunfire that started it all.